It's the TCTV Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. We'll teach you how to shoot. We'll teach you how to light. Teach you how to mic and edit right. Each second Saturday there's a free training. From programs on display to focusing and framing. It's the TCTV Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. You're watching TCTV. It's the Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. Second Saturdays at 12 o'clock in Studio A.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the TCTV Training Show and for coming to the second Saturday workshop. Today, we're going to talk about making titles in Photoshop. I just want to say first, every second Saturday, we do this at 12 o'clock. And if you're new to TCTV, you should come in before the second Saturday workshop at 10:30 and do an orientation and learn all about what TCTV is about. So we're going to stick to learning about making titles in Photoshop for use in your video. We're not going to do some of the other things that Photoshop can do, like putting somebody's head on somebody else's body. That you can do all kinds of things in Photoshop, filtering and just refining your photographs and stuff. But we're just going to use it to make text documents. And you can use those documents in the control room on the Expression CG system for use in your studio productions, or you can just edit them into Final Cut. So this is what you're going to see when you open up Final Cut. Let's see, when you go to new, when you want to open up a new one, what I want you to learn to use is preset, where it says here, this is the default screen that comes up when you click new, but we want to name it, of course. We can name it, second Saturday training or something like that. And what we want to do is use the preset film and video. Okay, one more step. You want to change NTSC-DV to HD. Let's see here. I want to use 1080i, or it doesn't need to be I. It can just be here. Let's use this one. HDTV 1080p 29.97, and that's going to give you the width of 1920 by 1080. So if you don't use this preset, just put these numbers in by hand. But if you go to preset film and video and change the size to any one of these HD ones, except for the 720, you want a 1080 one. Oh, that's not 1080. Okay, I want this one. I want 1920 by 1080. All right. So when we do that, it opens up and it looks like this dimension, the widescreen dimensions. I'm going to go ahead and open up a file I've already been working on. Let's go to full screen graphics. There we go. Okay, here's a file I've already been working on. And I just want to get you oriented to the layout of this system. And up here at the top we have the menus here. Photoshop, File, Edit, Image, Layer, Select, Filter, Analysis, 3D. All of these menus, this is what we're going to call this our menu bar, our top menu bar. And you might need to use this to go to save your project. You need to use the file menu to go to save. Some of this other stuff we might not even get into, except for the windows. Whenever we need a certain window open and it doesn't happen to be open, for instance, we're going to go over the layers menu. We're going to use the character menu some today. So you can just go into this windows here to pop one of those up that you need. We also have tools along the left side. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. We shrunk it down. Let's bring it back up. Okay. Now this thing on the left side of the screen, this one here is this is to move around items. The next one down is your selection. We have a lot of stuff in the tools that we're not going to even get into. The only ones we're really going to use today are the selection, the gradient, which is right here, and the text, which is right there, that T one. And maybe the colors down here at the bottom. We might use those. We have a lot of windows in Photoshop, and right now you'll see character window is open. We've got history window. We've got layers down here. And if you accidentally close one of these, you want to go up to Window and open it back up by clicking Layers. There we go. There's my layers back up. Some of these other things we don't need, but I can just leave them open. Or I can, if they get on your nerves, you can just close them like that, or close them with the little red dots on them. I'll go ahead and close all of these adjustments there. And what do we got? Channels. We don't need that in there. Good. That looks better. Let's go ahead and close those. History. I'll teach you what history is. We'll do that. Okay. So we have, this is your main workspace, is this one here in the middle that says Second Saturday Workshop. Let's navigate around in here. Oops, I put a Z in there. Well, your main workshop is this screen in the middle. I'm trying to, there, we can make it a little bit bigger. I did that with the Apple 0 key combination, and that filled the workspace as big as it can get in our, can we see, you guys can see everything, yeah. Okay, good. Well, I wanted to start out with layers next, or I wanted to go to layers next and explain to you what layers are, okay? And this is a good project to teach you what this is because I've got a lot of layers in this project. So I'm going to extend this layers window down and make it bigger. Just pull it open. All right. There's the layers, and when we're working with layers, we're going to talk about opening the layer window. And I already did that with when I went to the window, menu at the top there. How to create a new layer, duplicate layers, and delete layers. Select the layer you want, arrange your layers, and then make it visible or not. So all of those things are at your disposal with this window here. And let me show you what that looks like. At the very top of this layers window, we have this one that says Second Saturday Workshop. And the easiest way to demonstrate what layers can do for you is just to make that invisible. And so we're kind of skipping to the last item on that list there, which is making layers invisible or visible. And if I click this little eyeball next to where it says Second Saturday Workshop, this is actually, see, it has a T in there. That's showing us that this is a text layer. And if I make it invisible, look, our words went away. Did you see that? There we go, our words went away. So the next thing down on these layers is this one, and that happens to be that big screen there in the middle. And so I can make that invisible, I can make this invisible, and now we're back to just this one that says layer 9. Well, what happens when I make that invisible? Now we got a whole bunch of other stuff in there. And that's because this layer 9 was covering it up. It's a full screen page. So it's covering all the layers beneath it. When we make it invisible, we see more layers. And here's another text layer. We can make that invisible. We can make this one invisible. We can make this one invisible. You can also move these things around. And there we're back to where we were before, where the full screen graphic is covering up everything underneath it. We make that invisible, we see more. And that's just the way I laid out this project, is I just kind of put each slide in sections. And we can rearrange those sections. So let me show you. We can, now this layer we can't see because it's behind layer 4 where it says layer 4, but if I just drag it up, now we see the title Working with Layers because we put it over the full screen graphic. So you can rearrange these things in however you need them to be to make your workflow easy. And you can also delete them. So like here, for instance, if I make this one visible, or maybe this one visible, I can click on that layer and I can go to the trash can down here and make it go away. Now we just deleted it. And then we can delete this one too. Click the little trash can, delete it. It's gone. But you know what? You can undo, but it only does one time. And the undo shortcut was Apple Z. It's the same undo as in Final Cut. So Apple Z will undo what I just did, but in order to undo before that, I have to go to the history menu. And I might as well show you this now, just in case you get into trouble. You can bring up the history menu. And if you can't see it, you go to Window and you pull up history. Okay, so I just made it invisible, but let's make it visible again. History. History allows you to go back in time until, I guess, you opened the project. So if we go, see here it says delete layer. We can go back. We go up to layer order. And that's where we've started reordering these things. And we can go back and we can go back and we can go back to where we opened it. So now my project is just like it was when I opened it, without all that moving around and making layers invisible. Now it's back to the way I opened it. So your history menu will come into play if you need to go back more than one level of undo. But if you just need to undo the last thing you did, you can just use Apple Z and just undo it like that. Or you can click Edit Undo, and whatever it says, undo state change. The other thing you can do with layers is you can duplicate them, okay? And all of this stuff, this layer right here that I made invisible, and just this one that says Second Saturday Workshop, the one that says Second Saturday Workshop is actually a duplication of this one here that says creating a background. You see this here. And you see that creating a background and Second Saturday Workshop look the same. They have the same font, they have the same colors, they have the same outline. You see the outline there? And the way I wanted them all to look the same, so what I did is I just duplicated one of them and then changed the words, you know. So to duplicate something in the layers menu, you can right click it and you can hit duplicate layer. And then it says, what do you want to call it? We'll call it training test. I don't know. There it is. And now we've got this one called training test. Now it's the same as this one. So, okay, let me just, I'm muting some of these things. So the thing that I just made looks like this. And it looks exactly the same as this one. So what you can do, once you duplicate that, you can just change what it says. And we can say, so now we have both of those titles, and we make the one visible that we want to use, or make the other one invisible, and then they look the same. So that's helpful. Then you don't have to do all that formatting, find the font, find the size you want. You can just duplicate your text so it looks the same. And you can, and like for instance, this thing right here where it says the gradient and fill tools, let's go to layers. Here, let's do this one. Where's the layers? Here it is. I found it. I'm going to mute this one, mute that one, mute that one, that one. We don't want background. We want this. There we go. Working with layers, because that's the topic we're talking about. Okay. So the working with layers text is this one up here, and it looks like that, and I made it invisible. And then the next one, opening the layers window, new, duplicate, delete, all this stuff right here, all this text in here. This is actually just one layer with carriage returns. So you can do it that way, but if you need more control, if you need to move one line over a little bit and another line indent, I mean, of course you could do it like by just maybe putting a tab in there. You could do that kind of stuff. But if you even need more control and you want to layer, you want to move those lines of text in different ways, maybe size one up, maybe you might need to make them different layers, you know. But right now they're all one layer that I designed with carriage returns. So you can always do carriage returns in your text. And we're going to talk more about text when we get to text. So right now we're just talking about layers. There's probably another way to duplicate these layers, and I believe like if you take it and drag it down to where it says new, boom, that made a duplicate. So there's some controls down here, like this one's the trash can. We went over that one. That's how to delete a layer. And I made a duplicate of that one. I could just delete it. This new one here, that's to create a new layer. There it is. It says layer 10. So that layer is going to be on top of all the other layers. So it will show up if I did something like draw all over it. Let's just, well, I'll use the fill tool. Let's just do that. See that? I just filled the screen with black. And since that layer is on top of all this other stuff, except for this thing, well, not that thing, except for this thing, then when we move it, now you can see some of the other stuff, because that's a full screen layer that now is behind this full screen layer, so you can't even see it unless we make that one visible. Is this layer stuff sinking in with you guys? Do you understand how these layers work? They are in order. You know, the one that's on the top is the one that's going to be in the front, you know, and the one that's on the bottom is going to be the one that's in the very back. Okay. What is this one? Create a new group. Oh, well, there's groups. We're not going to get into groups. That's just going to confuse you. Let's move on to the next topic, which is how to make a background. So I think what I'll do here is I'll create a new project, or I'll just go back to this. This is a blank project we created earlier before I opened up that one, just to show you layers. So now we're starting with a new project, and I'm going to teach you how to make the background. Okay, and you saw in this one that my backgrounds look like this right here, right? You know, I've got this background, I've got this background right here. I'm going to show you how I make those, okay? So making a background, the gradient and fill tools, we can use those to make the background. We're going to talk about how you change the gradient and the selection tools, and working with selection tools and gradients and fill. Filling your selection, that's what I just talked about, and then adding an image. So do you see the thing that's on the left of all that text, which shows the background window? That I'm considering adding an image. That's adding an image. So I added an image to this background, and that image is actually a screenshot, and I'll show you what those look like. But first, let's go back to this blank slide. It's white, so if you want white background, we're done. If you want a different color, I'll show you how to change that. So there's a number of ways you can change this white into any other color, and starting off, we can use the fill tool. So the fill tool is going to fill the screen with whatever is selected in your main color palette. Down here on the tools palette, you see that on the left there, this black, if I click on it, it allows me to change it to blue. What color do you guys want? Anyone? I'm hearing green. Green, green, green. All right, here we go. So I changed the main color. This is called your foreground color. This is your background color. So there's two colors right next to each other. You see that? You can switch them with that button. But the foreground color is green. So if I click the fill tool, which is this paint bucket thing, you see that paint bucket? We click over here and boom, it's green. So we made a big green background, and it's just plain green. So if that's good, that's what you want, then we can just go with that. But if you want something a little more complicated, more complex, so there's a lot of things you can do in Photoshop now, but we don't have a lot of time to really get in too much depth with that. So an easy one to do that looks fun is a gradient tool. So I'm going to show you what the gradient tool, but first, before we do that, there's another way to fill. You can go to edit and go to fill, and then we can use either the foreground color, the background color, or you can use some of these other presets. I can just make it black if I wanted to real easily. You can do it that way. So you either use the little paint bucket tool, or you just go to edit and go to fill. So we can go make it back to foreground color there, and it used green. Let me show you what a gradient does. It's a lot more fun. The gradient tool is behind, I believe. Yes. There's actually more than one tool in each one of these spots, and this one has paint bucket and gradient. So we switched that up to gradient, and now our paint bucket went away, and now it's gradient. So that's just something you have to know, is that these tools actually have more tools inside them. When you click and hold on the option there, you get a lot more things in there. So our gradient is behind the fill, or our fill is behind the gradient, depending on how it's selected. So how a gradient works is, let's do this with layers. I'm going to create a new layer. Click down here for the new layer. There you see it, layer 1 right there. And you see that checkerboard pattern? That's important to know what that is. Does anybody know what that checkerboard pattern means? What it means is that this is an invisible layer Whenever you see checkerboard, it means there's nothing. It's not white, it's not black, it's actually clear. So if we took this and we rendered this out and we kept the what's called an alpha channel, then you put it in Final Cut, you put it down on your timeline, and you would see nothing. It'd just be clear. Now if you had this background enabled, then you'd just see a big green screen. So, but we're going to mute the background image, and that would be clear. But we'll talk more about what the alpha channel and having a clear background means for you. But let's just go back to this gradient thing here. Gradient, and I'm going to layer. I'm going to put a gradient. Does everybody know what a gradient is? It's where you take one color and blend it to another, or several colors. It's where you're gradually going from one color to another, or from one color to another color to another color. Could be multiple. So if I have green and gray as my foreground and background, and I have gradient selected, and I just draw a line down this, it makes us a gradient between green and gray. All right. If we undo that, we change the background color to maybe a Seahawks color, then we've got a Seahawks gradient. There you go. And that looks really nice. Does that look a lot better than this right here? Hold on. They're fun, aren't they? Gradients are fun. There's a lot more you can do with gradients. There's one gradient we just made. We'll keep that, make a new layer. I'll move this layer to the top. And then we'll fill this layer with a different kind of gradient. Here's where we start getting into some more stuff up here on this bar up here. This is kind of what I'm calling the options bar. It's below the menu bar at the top there, and it depends on what tool you have selected. This will change to other things. For instance, if I change it to text, you see that it changes, right? I go back to gradient, and over here to the left we have kind of a representation of our gradient and what it looks like. If I click that, I've got some presets here that I can use. Look at that one. Isn't this one interesting? Do you see that? Watch this. I'm going to select this one, and then I'm going to draw a new gradient, but I'm going to make this one invisible. Look at that. What do you notice about this? Do you see the checkerboard pattern? And what I told you, the checkerboard pattern was clear. Let me do this a little bit more drastically here. Oh, let's undo this. Oh, I'm just going to delete this layer. Delete the layer, new layer, and there we go. So we can just have just a little bit of green at the bottom and the rest of the screen clear. Depending on how you draw this line, it makes the gradient, more drastic at one part or even. Usually if you drag it across the entire screen, it'll give you the full ramp. You'll see the full ramp of the gradient. I'm going to I'm going to delete all that and do this again. All right. So what I did just now real quickly is I did Command A, which does a selection of the whole screen, and then I hit the delete key because I wanted to clear that layer. So I'm going to get rid of that selection, and then we're going to make this again, but we're going to change the gradient type. Look at this one here. This is the first gradient type, but look, we have a radial gradient, which makes the middle the color and the outside the invisible. And this is only because I have this selected, but if I changed it to this like Christmas one, and then I did it again, I'm going to delete it first and do it again. There we go. So now we have just this giant Christmas ball. Undo that. Look, that's the radial one. This is, I don't know what it's called. What is it called? Angle gradient. That's what it's called. There. That's kind of funky. You might need something like that. There's also this one that does like both ways. It kind of reverses itself and goes back to the green at the bottom. You see that doing that? And then we have like what is this? A diamond gradient. So that just makes a big diamond in there. So we will undo that too. And let's show you how to actually make your own gradient. And it's easy to, if we go to the default here, the very first one, that's going to just gradient from our foreground color to our background color. But if we want more control, we don't want to use those presets, then what we need to do is go to Window and open up, where is it? Gradient. Is it in here? Maybe it's not a window. Maybe I just double click on that. No, there it is. You click on the gradient editor. I would think that would be in Windows. Maybe I didn't see it. But anyway, this is a way to actually have more control over your gradient. So I can move this to make, what is that doing? I think this needs to be added a color. We're going to add a color. Add purple. There we go. So now we can have 3 colors in there. We can have more than that. We just double click in here. We can make another color, make a little light blue. We can have a whole rainbow thing going. And then we can draw that gradient across the screen, and it looks like, oh, well, we're in diamond mode. Diamond mode's kind of weird. I kind of like this one. I think this one would look good. Anyway, maybe like that. Anyway, you can see that you can do a lot of different things with your gradient tool, right? I want to use gradient with my selection tool, though, and that's how I managed to do, hold on, I'm going to open up another project, go to File, Open, and I'm going to open my lower third. Do you guys know what a lower third is? Have you heard that before? Lower third? Lower third is a graphic that's going to come down on your screen, and maybe we can bring up a lower third right now. You can see my name or something, but maybe not. I'm looking at them. Anyway, this is a lower third, and I created, there we go, there's our lower third. You guys don't see it here, but the audience does. Okay. A lower third is a graphic that comes up. It's for names. Whenever you have somebody's name, you need to put that up in their title, or you know what this program is, that kind of stuff. That's what a lower third is. This is the lower third I created for this workshop, and you can tell what looks familiar. Do you see a gradient in there? You see the alpha channel? Okay, and so what that's going to mean is only where you see, anywhere you see those checkerboards, those are going to be invisible, and you're going to see your video there, right? That's where the video is going to be. But on top of that video, you're going to see this rectangle that has a purple to white gradient, and then it has a title at the top and a title at the bottom. So the way I created, you can see my layers here. There's one of my layers, one of the text there. Here's another layer. Here's another layer right there. That's the square. And here's kind of a failed layer there that I didn't end up using and I didn't delete. So I just made it invisible. Other thing is, when you open up a project, it's going to default giving you a background. And if you need an alpha channel, like if you're making a lower third, the easiest way to make a lower third is to use that alpha channel. But what you have to remember is when you open up a new project, it defaults to give you a background layer that's usually white. So in order to have that alpha channel, you have to make that invisible or delete it altogether. So in order to get these checkerboard things that I'm talking about, make sure you mute that bottom layer, you know, before you save your file out to use in Final Cut. So the way I did this, let me go to here's our new project. So I'm using selection tool, all right? And the selection tool, there's lots of different ones inside here. There's a elliptical, there's a single row, there's a rectangle. I often use just rectangle for this, and that's what I did for that. And maybe I'll just stick with teaching you how I made that particular lower third for this workshop. But what I did is I made it a rectangle box like this. And now that I have that selected, anything that I do, let me just show you with a paintbrush. Anything I do is only going to appear inside, where's a paintbrush? I think it's under pencil. Come on, pen. Here we go, brush. All right, so we're going to make a, you don't need to know all this stuff because you're probably not going to be drawing with Photoshop. But if you were drawing with Photoshop, you see how I'm drawing here? I'm holding down, I'm clicking, and nothing's happening. But when I go down here, look, it works. You see that? So the selection only allows you to do things within that selection. So that when you have something selected, it's only going to draw inside there. So anything else you do outside is just not going to show up. So if we undo that drawing and we take our gradient again, and our rainbow is still there, so let's go ahead and use our rainbow. There. And now we have a rainbow. And even if I drew that across the selection, like all the way from the top down to the bottom like this, it only shows up within the selection. So that's an easy way to make a gradient box, is to use your selection tool, make a big rectangle. You can also make other shapes too. For instance, maybe you needed, you can draw a shape with your selection tools, and that's with this lasso here. So look, if I clear that selection and I draw like a weird bubbly thing like this, bloop, 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 there. And now you see that's selected, and we take our gradient tool, and this works with fill as well. See if I can fill it, and I can use, let's use a pattern for once. Let's try that. There. So we filled only the thing I had selected. All right. Now let's undo that. And again, I can take my gradient tool, make this thing rainbow colored like that. You know, that's a little tacky looking. I'd probably work on it a little more before using that. But and then if we don't like any of that we just take the layer and delete it. Then we don't lose everything. We just lose that one layer. Make that layer go away. There. New layer. New selection. And make the box again. There we go. And use our gradient. Let's change this from this rainbow to something else. Like that. There we go. That's good. Let me consult my notes here. How to use the gradient fill, how to change the gradient fill tool. We did that using the shape tool to make a background. Good. Anybody have any questions on this? On how to make a gradient or a fill the screen? Okay. Well, let's move on to our next item. I want to go back to the background one more time because I didn't teach you how to add an image, okay? And adding an image, all right? So if we were to do, let's make this invisible. If we had this going on, this background, a full screen, we're talking about, now I'm making a full screen page for maybe an intro to your show. We know what a lower third is. That's where you need to put somebody's title up. But sometimes you might need a full page thing. You might need to show some stats, just like I've been doing here to show you guys, you know, kind of like a PowerPoint slide here. But in order to get that little image off to the left there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open an image that I have already pre-created. And I did this using screenshots. So here are the screenshots I've done. Let's use this one. All right, so this is the one we're going to next, the adding text. So that is the image, and it's actually something I took with a screenshot, and it is a menu of Final Cut Pro, but I needed it in the graphic. So now what I do, I have this on a different, are you guys noticing that I have like several different documents open? You see that? I'm clicking on, this is our new one that we created at first. This is something I opened. This is something I opened. And this is the image that I opened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Apple A to select this whole thing. Wait a minute. There we go. You see those dotted lines around it? That means I have it selected. I'm going to copy it using Apple C. And if you don't remember that, you just go to edit here. We got copy paste, right? You can just copy it here. Then we're going to go back to our very first one, where we're going to put it, and we're going to paste Apple V, or going to the menu and hitting paste. So here's our little image that we created, and it's really small. So I'm going to size it up, and to size it up, there's a keyboard shortcut, but also there's a way to do it. The keyboard shortcut is Apple T, and that lit up in editing, didn't it? Transform. There it is. Free transform, okay? You see that menu item? It's under edit, but the cheat for it is Apple T. So when we hit Apple T, it gives us these bounding boxes around the image. And what I can do is I can size this up now by grabbing a corner. See that? I made it actually reversed by taking it across the horizon line. But there we went. And you see how it's getting fat and it's getting tall and all that stuff. And it's not really sizing up evenly. So I don't want it to be a different proportion. I don't want it to be, tall or fat. I want it to be just like it was. So what I'm going to do is undo that. And whenever I do this, if I hold down the shift button and then I size it up, then it sizes up uniformly. Now this doesn't have to be a menu that says character paragraph from Photoshop. This could be a logo. You may need to put somebody's logo on your full screen graphic or in your lower thirds. And to do that, you get their logo, you open up the file, it opens up, you highlight it, you copy it, then you go to your other document and you paste it in there. And look what happened. Do you see in the layers here? Look at that. Oh, hold on. I have to hit enter to make that transform take. There we go. You see how it goes invisible? It put it on another clean layer automatically, which is great. It's on a nice clean layer. We can make it invisible. We can delete it if we need to. It doesn't impact all of the other stuff we've got going on, which is great. That's why layers are so great. You can, you're not messing anything up. You can just get rid of that layer. There we go. So that's how to add an image, and usually you're going to want to add a logo. So, got it? Now let's go and let's learn how to make text. All right, you ready for that? Let's do some text. I'll start off. We'll pretend this is a full spec. Okay, here's our text. Adding text. Use the text tool. I'm going to show you where the text tool is. Text options bar, the character window, text effects, which are very important, and duplicating in layers. I think I talked about that in layers, how I like to do text layers. I like to duplicate them so they're the same font, they're the same size, they have the same outline and whatnot. So let's just add a text on this. We're going to create that graphic you just saw, the one we just looked at. We're going to create it here. So text, click here. Did you see what I just did? I just clicked the T tool, then I clicked on the screen where I want my text to start, and I'm going to type adding text. Uh-oh. Look at that. It's all green. Oh, goodness. Did I just delete it? I think I just deleted it. Let me type it again. Adding text. There we go. We'll hit enter. It's enter. There we go. All right. So we can't see it because it's green. And why is it green? You guys know? Do you know why I typed it and it typed green?
Isn't that the fill color that we have?
Yes, it's this. The foreground color is set to green. If I switched it to a different color, it would type in a different color. But no need to fear, we can change that up with the options bar. All right. So when I have text selected, remember that stuff that was up here with gradient and it was all different stuff? Well, now it's all text things. So if I click on this color and change it to white, then we've got white text that says adding text. Now we can see it over the green. So that's good. Do you guys like it white? It looks good white, but the thing is it needs kind of like an outline or something. I'll show you how to get that later. But let's talk about some of these other options up here. First off is, first off was the color. We already did that. I need to get to my layer. I accidentally be aware of this whenever you're working with text and you click on the text tool and you click on the screen. Sometimes it automatically makes a new layer for you, even though you're trying to manipulate the layer you already have. So now we're working on layer 4. I just got to get rid of that. Get rid of layer 4. Go back to adding text layer. Click in here. Now we've got it. Okay. So if I change the font here, it doesn't change the font. And that's because I need to actually highlight it. So when I highlight that and I change the font, now it changes the font. See that? So sometimes you have to highlight the text you're working with. And we want to make it a little bit bigger. So there's fonts, right? And here's the font style. Do you want a heavy font? There you go. Now we have a bold. We also have the size. There you go, 80 points. Now it looks like you can only choose from these, but that's not true because you can just type in like 100. There we go. That's pretty big. That's a good size. So, oh, and the next thing I just did is I clicked on the Move tool, and since I have the Adding Text layer highlighted, then I'm moving that one. But you got to realize that whatever you've got highlighted here, highlighting is how it's blue. You see how this is blue? And now the text one is blue. Well, if I have this one highlighted and I click the Move tool, look what we do. We're moving the background around. See that? But what I needed to do, I'm just going to undo. What I needed to do was move the text. So with the text highlighted, I can move the text. You got it? And let's go back to the text tool and see if there's other things up here. We've got our text size. We've got our formatting. So like, do we need it left justified, centered, or right justified? Right now it's centered. And I think that's going to work well for the way I've got this graphic. Some of the other things I will have to use the left justification when we add the little paragraph of stuff. So let's move on to another text layer. So now that I want to make a new text layer, I click text tool, I click where I want it to start. I want to make it left justified, which means it's going to start typing from the cursor that way, instead of typing from the cursor and making it center and making the words come out like that, uniformly on the left and the right. We want it just the text to come out toward the right. So now that we do that, we want to type in here. Oh, and this is too big, I can already tell. Let's change it to 60. And then we want to say, what's the first thing we said about adding text? Using the text. Oh my gosh, my formatting got changed again. You see how it's typing from the center now? So if we change this to that, that's what I wanted it to do. Using text tool. Then the next line would be something like the options bar. I don't remember what our graphic said, but options bar there. Then we've got the character window. We haven't gone over that. Wingo. There. Okay, we've got plenty of room there. And adding effects, I think. Adding effects. There. And you see this is all one layer that I can make invisible like that. I can also move it around, you know, if I like, I think it needs to just maybe be down here a little bit. I can just move it down here. And you can put carriage returns in there, stuff like that. But you'll notice something different. Doesn't it look a little bit different from, let me pull up. Here it is. From this text. You see, what do you notice about this text that's different from this text? It's easier to see, right? Yeah. It's the outline. The outline, and there's a drop shadow. Drop shadow and outline, or stroke. So I want to go over the character window. That is this little image that you see over here. Character window is under character. Pull that up. This is real small, a lot smaller than our images here. But this is how you control some of the things that I was already controlling in, here, let's go back to text tool. You have to have your text tool highlighted. Then, okay, so this will change things like font size. I can change my font size here. Change it to 72. You see that? I can highlight certain text and make it a different font. You know, you can use that font. You see that? So you have some controls in character, but they're pretty much the same controls that you have in this options bar up here. And I kind of like the options bar a lot better, so I usually use that. But this is here in case you need it. And then to bring it up, you go to Window and pull up Character. There's also Paragraph. Yeah, there's Paragraph. There's a Paragraph window, and that's where you get your formatting. But it's kind of silly because all that stuff is all up in that one bar at the top. So it might be best just to use the options bar. So let's move on to how to add effects to your text, okay? So here we go. You can add your effects by double-clicking the layer. Is that going to do it? They might have changed it. They used to have it do that. Well, here it is. It's down here on the layers menu under effects. There's probably a number of different ways to get to this in the menus and stuff. The one I often use is, I think you can right click it. That's what you can do. Right click. That's where it is. So your layer properties, is that it? No, that's not it. It's a blending mode. There it is. It's under blending options. But it is also right down here where it says effects. So if I click, I'm going to start with the one that says adding text. That's our main title here. So let's go to effects. Oh, well, okay, let's just bring them all up. Here's all of the effects you can add. And they call it layer styles. The very top one is the drop shadow. This is what a drop shadow looks like. Did you see it happen? Doesn't that look good? You see it happen on the adding text there? I'm toggling it off and on? Okay, I'm going to assume you do. All right. So drop shadow, if I add that and I go to drop shadow, I can make it bigger. I can move the distance that the drop shadow is away from my text. I can change the direction, make it go off to the left instead of the right, you know. And I can change the size of the spread. So that kind of gave me a little bit of a blur to it, which looks really good. And I like the way that looks a lot. But there's a lot of other things you can do. That's just one of these options. Look at these other things in here. You've got inner shadow. We can make it look embossed, you know, or like it has a bevel or something. Isn't that cool? You've got outer glow. And all of these things can be manipulated by clicking on it. It's just kind of like the layers are. You have to click on the word drop shadow to change the menu here. Click on the word inner shadow to change, you know, the options of the inner shadow. I can make it completely transparent by changing the opacity. Opacity is just how visible it is. If you turn it all the way down, then it's invisible. If you turn it all the way up, then it's completely visible and that you can't see through it at all. For instance, the drop shadow here is at opacity 75. That's not 100%. When I bring it to 100%, and if I change down the spread or the size of the spread there, now you can see that that shadow is solid black, you know, when before it was see-through some, you know what I mean? And if we bring this image up here, you can maybe tell. Let's just say, okay, we're going to keep that. We're going to bring this image up behind it so you can kind of tell. You can see that you can still see the image, you know, through that drop shadow. That drop shadow isn't solid. But if it was solid, go to my drop shadow here, then you can't see through it. See that? Solid black. So that's what your opacity does. And you have that opacity on a lot of options here. You know, let's turn off our inner shadow. Another one I used in the demonstration in the full screen graphic I had there for you was stroke. And stroke is the outline. It's all the way at the bottom, but I'm going to go ahead and skip to it because it's important. And the stroke, if we look at the options, you can change the color of the stroke. So that's the outline you're seeing. See, now I made it a light blue outline. Let's make it a darker. Maybe we should make it a dark green. There we go. So now we have a dark green stroke. We can make it bigger. See, we got a real big outline of that text. So big that, you know, it's all blending together. But you probably don't want that drastic. You probably want something like maybe that. That looks pretty good. So that's stroke. You can put a stroke on there. It can be any color you want. It can be any size you want. It can also be some of it see-through. So if we made it really big, then we change the opacity, then you can see through some of that stroke. And now you can tell we're getting into kind of like too many options. You're like, I can't spend all this time on the drop shadow, you know? Well, just spend a little bit of time to make to where your words are visible, you know, before you finish your project. And the effects can help you with that, making your words more visible. There's a lot of other things in here that you can play with, like bevel and emboss. Did you see what that just did? Look at that. Look at that what that did to my text. It used some kind of pattern, I believe. It's called gloss contour. Look at those. We can change all those. How fun is that? You guys don't look excited. I'm more excited than you guys are. Anyway, okay, so this is effects. All right, effects. Let's do some effects on these other this other text down here. So I'm going to go to my text tool. I have to have my text tool highlighted. I have to highlight. I don't know if I have to highlight it. Let's just make sure text is highlighted, and we want to make sure that this is in the foreground. Then we want to engage our effects. You can do that with that, or you can go to right click and go to blending options. So now we want to at least add the stroke onto that, and now it added a black stroke, and maybe I don't want, I kind of want a black stroke. Just gonna make it a little bit bigger though. There we go, black stroke. And look at this, you've got a gradient overlay. You can make your text, instead of it being white text, it can be a gradient, you know, isn't that fun? But you just make that invisible if you don't like it. Color overlay. If I don't like my white and I don't want to go up for here to the options bar, I can use this color overlay shortcut to change the color of the text. Satin will do some colors and effects, but this bevel and emboss was fun, wasn't it? Do you see that, how it made it look 3D? I wonder if I can zoom in on that for you. There we go. See what it did in the letters there? You see that darkness? It made it look like it's, you know, three-dimensional, popping out. So that's bevel and emboss, if you want to use that. And it's got lots of different options. Inner bevel, emboss, look at that, it's all changing. Outer bevel. So you can spend a lot of time playing with this, perfecting your characters, but just don't get too swamped in there. Make the size of it bigger. Oh, that's probably not a good idea. Outer glow. Anyway, lots of different effects. So if we were going to export this graphic like that, might want to center this up a little bit. And of course, I think I might want to get rid of that. Yes, just make it a little bit more normal. Okay. So this is our full screen graphic that we want to bring into Final Cut. You go to File, you go to Save. Then I have my thumb drive that I've been working on with my Photoshop Workshop folder. And I want to call this adding text again. Let's call it adding text again. Now it's going to save, if I do this, this is important for you to know, because if you just save it regular, you just click save, you name it, you put it in a spot, notice what it says up here, save as adding text again .psd, okay? And down here under format it says Photoshop, all right? That's a good idea to save that first. That way you preserve your layers, okay? In case you wanted to go back into this project and fix something. But that's why you save your Photoshop file. Then we're going to save as. You go to File, Save As. Then we're going to change this down here, Format. See where it says Format? We want to change that to, I like to use PNG. JPEG would also work, but I like to use PNG. I'm going to use PNG, adding text again, PNG. We save that, and it comes out all flat. Now if we open it, PNG is a image format that works well with Final Cut. It will also work well with the switcher and other things, so it's pretty good one. It's common. And if we open this here, the one I just saved as a PNG, it is one layer. See that? One layer. All that stuff just got flattened down. And that's a lot easier to deal with in your editing program. You can probably open up Photoshop files in Final Cut, but it gets a little bit more confusing. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Now, one thing we haven't gone over yet, we've gone over how to create or how to save our full screen graphics, but we haven't gone over how to save your lower third. So I'm going to go over to this lower third here, and there is a special thing that you need to do when you save this out. Now, if I was to use this lower third preset here in, for instance, expression. Expression is our CG system that we have in the control room, and you are probably just going to want to use this, like that. Because if you use that, then you can put the text in on the CG in the control room, and you're not locked into the words that you used. You can use this as kind of like your main background for your lower third, and then of course all around it is going to be invisible, and then you can put your text over on the CG program, and you can just like we did here, the CG you'll just create these again. You'll find the font you want, you'll find an outline, you'll create all that stuff again. But it's good to do it in Expression. Now, if you're doing it in Final Cut, same thing could apply. You could just save this as is, just the background part, and then you can write your text in with the text generators in Final Cut. If we were to use this, just that, what we want to do is mute those two layers. Then we want to go to File, Save As. Now, this is where you can't use a JPEG, okay? If we use a JPEG, I'll go ahead and save out a JPEG so I can show you. What did you just notice about that? Now it went away, but what did you see? Did you see anything? Well, watch this. Save as a PNG. So if you want alpha channel, you're going to need to, I think it does it automatically. Let's just save. All right. Now I'm going to open those two files I just created. Open lower third JPEG and lower third PNG. Here they are. All right, good. Now this one is the lower third PNG. This one is the lower third JPEG. What do you notice? The checkerboard, right? PNGs can save an alpha channel. So can some other formats like Targa. Can't think of them all off the top of my head, but JPEG doesn't. Okay, so if you try to save this out and you want to keep that alpha channel, you save it as a JPEG, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get your alpha channel. So I recommend PNGs so that you preserve that alpha channel. And of course, you can do something like this where you go, where's my lower third? Here's my lower third project. We've got these visible, right? Well, if we wanted to create a bunch of titles in here, and then we can save them out, like for instance, we can duplicate this layer, and then we can make it say something different. Instead of creating titles in Photoshop, for instance, maybe we have a different episode, but we want the same style of lower third. Then, you can do this where you can, let's see, what is next Second Saturday going to be about? Nobody knows, do they? Why is it doing this? Anyway, we can make it say something else, like, we can do that. And then we can also duplicate this one here. Duplicate. And we change the date to October. I don't know what the second Saturday in October is going to be yet. I'm just going to take a wild guess that it's the 8th. So make this one invisible. There we go. So I can do this. I can export this with the text in it, and I can use the PNG format. Then I've got a slide that says directing for television, Saturday, October 8th. My point is you can make all your slides with everything you need them to say, and then export them one by one as PNGs. Then you have like 10 PNGs that, or however many you have in your production. Or you can just make all this text invisible, do the text in Final Cut. So it's up to you. which however you want to do that. But always save your Photoshop file as a Photoshop file before you start saving your PNGs so you don't lose your layers, okay? Does that all make sense? Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the TCTV Training Show and the Second Saturday Workshop. I hope you will come in October and future Second Saturdays for other exciting workshops. Thanks for watching. They did it. They clapped.
We'll teach you how to shoot, we'll teach you how to light, teach you how to mic and edit right. Each second Saturday there's a free training, from programs on display to focusing and framing. It's the